Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining the IBM Service Engage, the Criterion Collection, a DevOps and Continuous Delivery Case Study webcast today. I'm Franny Schmidt, your Tivoli User Community Manager, and as part of your community management team, I would like to encourage you to visit the tech following today's webcast to download this and previous presentations given to our member community. This session presents IBM Service Engage as a case study in combining test-driven development and continuous delivery to deliver efficient web applications in a very small period of time and continue refining them seamlessly in production. Today's webcast is being live tweeted at #ServiceEngage. Today's presentation is being presented by Bill Higgins, Architect, IBM Service Engage, Jeff Sawyer, Developer with IBM Service Engage, Michael Barlock, Developer, IBM Service Engage, and Liz Riestadt, Community Manager for IBM Service Engage. Before we get started, I would like to cover a couple of administrative details. All of your phone lines are in listen-only mode, but you may ask a question at any time during today's presentation by using that chat window on your right-hand side of your screen. These chat questions and anything coming in through the live tweeting session will be answered at the end of the presentation. Today's session is being recorded, and we will be sending out an email with links to the replay and the presentation slides. So with that, I am going to turn the presentation over to Liz. Liz, take it away.
Hi there. Good morning and good afternoon, good evening to everybody. I'm not going to take up very much time. I just wanted to sort of reiterate what we were going to look at today and kind of talk about what we're hoping to inspire for everybody on the call. This team came together very quickly and executed very quickly, and it's a very small team within a very large organization. So hopefully, in taking a look at this, you'll learn get some ideas about how to implement DevOps, continuous delivery, but also in kind of a larger sense, think about what it is you can accomplish within your teams, within a very small team really quickly, and get some inspiration from it. I'm really excited to have Bill here today. Bill Higgins is going to kick off with this presentation, and then we have Jeff Sawyer and Michael Barlock, who we commonly refer to as just Barlock, and they're going to take you through some of the things that they did for the Service Engage website that they're pleased with and kind of talk about the overall team philosophy. So without introducing it any further, I'm going to hand things over to Bill. Thanks.
Hey everybody, this is Bill, and if you could give me the screen sharing, please.
Bill, I'm sorry, this is Franny. I made Liz presenter. Should I make you presenter instead?
Nope, we're good. I'm just starting it now.
Okay, got it.
Just give me 1 second. Alrighty. So basically, I don't know if everybody's familiar with Service Engage or not, but it's a web application that's on the internet right now at www.ibmserviceengage.com. And about maybe 6-8 months ago, we decided that while and when I say we, I mean the Cloud and Smarter Infrastructure Division, while we had dabbled with SaaS in the past, we wanted to make a big move into it, and we wanted to make it extremely simple for our users to learn, try, and buy our SaaS offerings. And we decided that we really wanted to provide a really nice, beautiful, new modern website to enable that learn, try, and buy. And so the problem was we didn't have anything like that. And so we decided we were going to create a new website from scratch, and it basically became the Service Engage website. And it's now live at www.ibmserviceengage.com. But basically, we built the primary Service Engage portal with a team of only 4 to 6 developers in the course of about 5 months. We started it in mid-September 2013, and our goal was to launch it at Pulse in February 2014, so it was basically 5 months. And we wanted it to be production quality that people could actually use, learn, try, and buy an initial set of SaaS offerings. and we achieved that. So what I'm basically going to do is talk about how we did that, and then I'm going to talk about how we're evolving it with the second iteration. So the first thing is Service Engage itself is part of a broader IBM move to the cloud. So there's a IBM Cloud Marketplace that we launched about a month and a half ago, and Service Engage is a part of that. You can kind of think of IBM Cloud Marketplace as the mega mall of IBM Cloud offerings, and Service Engage is a section of that sort that deals with service management. It's implemented as a Node.js web app that runs on top of Bluemix. So for those of you not familiar with Node.js, it's a pretty new web application runtime, pretty comparable to Java. It's got some new modern web frameworks that makes the development a bit faster. And Bluemix is our strategic platform as a service that we announced at the same time that we announced Service Engage at Pulse. It's built on top of the open source Cloud Foundry technology. And the reason we chose Bluemix was simply we believed that it would enable our ability to do continuous deployment, which I'll talk about in a few minutes here. And it pretty much lived up to our expectations. And so we've had a really good partnership with the Bluemix team, and I encourage you to check that out as well. Like I said earlier, Service Engage was implemented by what the industry calls a two-pizza team. That's a term that comes from Amazon, and it basically means a team that's small enough that you could feed them with 2 pizzas. And it's kind of amazing that we were able to build what we did with such a small team, and you know it goes to the credit of developers like Jeff and Matt, but it also is because of an important architectural decision that we made. We decided that we would try to host nothing ourselves and rather depend on other hosted infrastructure providers. So for the app runtime, we chose Bluemix, which means that for us, the infrastructure is a set of APIs that we can use. And for the underlying persistent store, we chose to use Cloudant, which is a technology that we ended up acquiring after we had begun to use them. And it's a persistence technology built around CouchDB, but with excellent operational quality. The final thing is that for the componentry of Service Engage, like the UI technology, the controller technology, we heavily relied on open source. And by doing that, we were able to really focus our development energy on implementing this beautiful design that our talented designer, Lisa Noble, came up with. And so I think that's a really important point. I think one of the things you need to really move fast in the modern world is to leverage the high-quality infrastructure, hosted infrastructure, and whether it's hosted by someone else in your company or a hosted service provider like IBM, that really allows you to focus on design and then delivery, rapid iterative delivery of great design. Okay. Now, I'm going to briefly switch over and show you a demo of our continuous deployment system, and then I'll go explain what you saw. So actually, let me first show the website. Okay, so the lag I'm seeing on my screen is pretty bad. Franny, can you just tell me if you're seeing the Service Engage website, or are you still seeing the About Service Engage slide?
No, I'm seeing the Service Engage website.
Okay, my thing must just be slow. Okay, so this is the current version of the Service Engage website. This is basically what we delivered for Pulse. One of the bad things about delivering something brand new at a short period of time with a fixed time frame is that you usually only understand what you're trying to build when you're most of the way through it and when you're nearly out of time. So when you look at the www.ibmserviceengage.com site today, there's some really good ideas there, but by December or January, we were already thinking about, okay, now we understand what we're doing, and we can imagine a design that would do that much better, but we have to ship. So what I'm going to talk about from a development perspective is actually the development of the next version of Service Engage, which I just switched to. This is what we refer to as the V2 design. So basically, the V2 design takes everything we learned during that initial 5-month period, and basically we addressed a lot of the technical and design problems that we saw. And we've actually developed this even faster. So V1 took us about 5 months. V2, even though it's significantly better, took us only 1 month. So with the with the development of the V2 website, we have our team of about 5 to 7 developers delivering to production all of the time. So even though this V2 version of Service Engage isn't actually quote-unquote shipped yet, it's actually running live on the internet. It's simply not linked in and not advertised in a general way. So we still kind of advertise the V1 website because that's considered more done. But we've been developing V2 in production the whole time, and basically it is fully functional. It just has some missing things. So that's another one of our development principles, which I'll talk about, which we call a dark launch. And a dark launch is basically running code live in production, but shielding it from the general population so that you can gain confidence in both the technical quality and the design quality, and I'll talk about that in a minute here. But let me just show you really quickly how we update the site. So the tab I just switched to is our Jenkins continuous integration and continuous deployment system. Currently, we're using our own Jenkins system, but we're working very closely with another group at IBM called the IBM DevOps Services team. They're formerly the Jazz Hub team, to basically take some of the innovations that we came up with while we were developing Service Engage and make it available to all of the IBM DevOps Services customers via that property. And once they've implemented those enhancements, we're actually going to adopt the IBM DevOps Services as our home for developing Service Engage. But we purposely chose a lot of the same technologies that IBM DevOps Services use so that we could make that migration once we kind of came together on a set of functionality. So this is the what you see here is our list of deployment jobs for the V2 Service Engage website. So if you can see on the left here, we've already deployed, it looks like we're on our 3rd deployment of our day, and the team is primarily in the U.S. East Coast, so they've been working for about 2 hours. On a normal day, we'll probably deploy about maybe 10 to 20 times. Our deployments have gotten a bit slow over the past few months, so we deploy a little bit less. We'll be fixing that. But basically, we wanted to create a continuous deployment system that allowed us to deploy to production whenever we wanted in a very safe way. So a lot of times when you talk about that ability for developers to deploy to production whenever they want, it seems like chaos. But we also have the principle that the website must never be down and the website must never be slow, and all website functionality must always work. So when you, and look at that deployment job just finished. So with this deployment job that just finished, I'm just clicking there and the Jenkins is a little slow. Hang on 1 second. Okay, for some reason the Jenkins thing isn't loading for me. I'm just having a little network difficulty. Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, we'll come back to that. So since I'm not able to access our Jenkins system for some reason, let me just talk about how it works. I just saw that the deploy finished, but for whatever reason, I'm not able to see the result. So how do we deploy many times a day without downtime? So the first guard we have against the downtime and the enabling of the continuous deployment is test-driven development. Test-driven development is kind of an old concept from software engineering, agile software development, and the basic principle is that for any important function in your site, you've got a corresponding automated test, and you don't promote code until all of the automated tests pass. So for instance, when we changed the UI of our free trial function for the V2 website, we completely overhauled the surrounding UI architecture. And the reason we were confident that the new version of the trial capability worked is because we already had built up a robust set of tens or even hundreds of tests showing or that could prove that the free trial capability worked. So So basically, every time we deploy the website, we run a full automated regression suite against the site's functionality, whether it's ensuring that all of the web pages show up, ensuring that we localize links correctly, whether it's ensuring that the free trial capability works with the downstream e-commerce systems. If one of those tests fails, the site basically, or the deployment job stops and the current version of the site stays available. So the key thing with test-driven development is it has to be part of your day-to-day process. It can't be an afterthought. You can't just implement a bunch of functionality and then say, maybe in the future we'll add tests for this. So the basic approach is that when you add a new feature to the site, you actually write a corresponding test case either before, if you're doing strict test-driven development, or at the same time as the feature. And that way you have an executable specification of the feature's functionality that runs as part of your build. And that helps you ensure that the first implementation of the feature is correct, but also it gets added to a regression bucket that ensures that in the future, as you implement other features and as you fix other bugs, that feature can't possibly regress without you knowing about it. So it's really a safety net. Likewise, how do you handle bugs with TDD? So basically, a bug represents a test case that you forgot. So there was some condition that you didn't consider when you were writing your tests, and when that condition arose in production, somebody said, hey, you've got a bug. And if it's a legitimate bug, the right way to fix it is just like with the feature, you write a new test case that can reproduce the bug because you want to be sure it's an actual bug. Then you write a bug fix, and then you deliver both the new test case and the bug fix together, and you ensure that the bug is fixed and it will never recur again. All right, the second technique I'd like to talk about is the actual continuous deployment. So if you want to be able to, first of all, you have to have that goal. You have to say, I wanted to be able to deploy whenever I've got new, interesting, good code that's ready. And so your goal should really be deployment. The active deployment should not be your long pole in the tent. The long pole in the tent should be your ability to design good user experiences and write good code. But to make that true, you need a pretty good infrastructure around it. And basically, the first thing about it is it's got to be completely automated. Because, number one, if you don't automate it, it's just going to be too slow, and it's not going to be true that the ability to write good code is the long pole. Basically, getting somebody's attention to perform the deployment is going to be the long pole, and also it's more error prone. So whenever you rely on manual steps, people can type the wrong thing, people can forget a step, something could change that the person doing the manual deployment isn't aware of, and things basically go wrong. So you have to automate everything. And this implies that just like with our tests, just like our test case are a first-class artifact that the team creates, our deployment automation is also a first-class artifact. So if you were to look at the Service Engage code base, you'd basically see three things. You'd see the code that actually implements the Service Engage function in UI, you'd see the automated test, and you'd see the deployment automation. And the deployment automation heavily relies on our infrastructure services like Bluemix and CloudInt to work. Okay, so the next slide basically visualizes the development pipeline or the deployment pipeline that our team came up with. So the first step is that when a developer finishes a new feature, new test cases, he or she basically requests a review. That sends it to our source control and code review system. We use a system called Garrett. And another developer, first it runs the set of automated tests so that we make sure that the code is basically functionally good. But then the second thing we do is we require another developer with commit rights to perform a code review, and only when that developer approves the code is it qualified to move to production. And we do that code review step for two reasons. The first reason is simply a quality sanity check. Sometimes a second set of eyes spots design problems or simply suboptimal implementations that the person who is heads down in the code for half a day just simply didn't think of. So the second set of eyes is extremely valuable. The second less obvious benefit of a code review is that it increases the team's understanding of the code base. And so if something goes wrong, say we actually have a problem occur in production because we missed a test case. Now you've actually got two people who should have pretty good understanding of what just went into the code base in order to fix it. So the next step is to actually perform the update of production. So once we have a qualified change, and again, that's a change that has both passed the set of tests and also passed a code review by a team member, then we run another job, that deployment job that I showed to you briefly, and the first thing we do is in Bluemix, we stand up a new instance of the application that's not on the internet, or sorry, no, I guess it's not on the internet. It's not on the internet, but it's as much a running version of the Service Engage application as the version of Service Engage that any of us can browse to. And we call that a dark deploy because it truly is deployed, but it's not visible to the user community. So usually these are good, but they could have a problem. So the second thing we do is a quick smoke test. That's a shallower version of the set of unit tests that we ran before that basically validate that something didn't go wrong at the last minute. Because sometimes, although we try to make the unit tests as close to production as possible, it's usually not possible to make them exactly the same. So we do a second set of smoke testing against the real running version of the app. If those smoke tests succeed, then we use Bluemix APIs to remap the primary Service Engage URL to the new version of the app, and then we kill the old version of the app. So from the user's perspective, the only thing that's changed is maybe the site got a new feature, but otherwise it's exactly the same site. From an infrastructure point of view, we just basically swapped brains and pointed at the new one and gave the user the new site with zero perceived downtime. The last thing I want to talk about, and then we'll hand it over to Jeff and Barlock, are feedback loops. So a really important point to make about continuous deployment and more broadly DevOps is that just getting the code to production quickly is necessary but not sufficient to actually succeed from a business perspective. There's a couple analogies for this. If you're driving in a car really fast, you actually need to know where you're going because it's very different to be going down the highway versus going towards a cliff. Another kind of less elegant metaphor is we don't want to deliver crap very efficiently. So we have an integrated product management, design, and development organization. You're talking development now, but we're very tightly integrated with our product management and designers, where we collaborate on the next feature or the next set of features. And what we want to do when we're pretty certain we want to do one of these new features is to get it running in production as quickly as possible so that we can get feedback on it, both from users, but then also from integrated instrumentation using web analytics technology like IBM Digital Analytics. So, for instance, with the V2 website, we started that. I remember we wrote the first line of code on a Thursday, and we actually had the first kind of new V2 web page running on a Friday. Now, it didn't look great, and we didn't surface it to users, but it was available, and then we could start sharing it with our stakeholders. And then as the technology gets more mature, you can actually measure how the users are perceiving it. So let me just talk about the technique that we use a lot. So there's a technique that we took from Etsy, who's a small e-commerce company in Brooklyn, that they call ramp-ups. And the basic goal of a ramp-up is to deploy a feature to production as quickly as possible and gain confidence on both the technical quality of the feature, but then also the quality of the feature vis-a-vis whatever its business goals are. So whether it's a better trial experience, whether it's a better learn experience, a better APM experience, you want to gain confidence that you're actually meeting your users' needs. And if you're not, you're iterating on addressing the problems. So let me talk about how this works concretely. So when we're implementing a new feature, initially the team codes the features in the test. The feature at that point is available to no one. The next thing we usually do, and we did this a lot with the V2 website, is we'll dark launch into production, but we'll use a variety of mechanisms to kind of hide it from the world. It could be as simple as a URL that nobody knows about, or it could be as fancy as a password-protected website that only team members can access. It really just depends on the nature of the feature. Once we gain confidence that the feature is good enough, by whatever standard of good enough we have, for us good enough always means highly available, very fast, very functional, but it could also have design metrics or business metrics. Then we may roll that out to any IBMer. So we have an internal mailing list where we will say, hey everyone, we just dark launched a new version of Trials. Please try it, it's fully functional, and give us your feedback. And usually we immediately get valuable feedback that we can implement. Sometimes it's more complicated and it takes a little bit longer to implement, but we get feedback very quickly. Now, in this example, let's say when all the IBMers tried it, we discovered that we have a performance regression that's a surprise. So what we would then do would be scale it back so that we don't actually affect the real site performance that the users are using, and we can address the performance problem. So it could be a rollback, or it could be restricting the access to the feature. It just depends. Then once we fix that problem, we'll again go broader. We'll iterate on the user experience based on the user feedback and web analytics. And finally, when we're confident in both the technical and design quality of the feature, we'll make it visible to everybody. So in about a week or two, when you go to www.ibmserviceengage.com, you're going to see an entirely different website because we're going to cut over to V2. And what that means is that we finished our ramp up with the overall V2 effort, and we're confident that we've actually made a major positive step forward for the Service Engage website. Now, that's a very big example, but we also do this in very small ways every day. All right, so that's our development process in a nutshell. There's actually lots more to say, but those are some of the key techniques that have made us successful. And now I think we're handing it over to Jeff and Michael to talk about some of their practices. And one other thing, I should have said this earlier, we'd actually prefer that, especially this part of the session, be interactive. So, Franny, you tell us about logistics, but if somebody has a question or a comment or a section they want to drill into, we'd really like that interaction.
Okay, wonderful. We do have a question that just came in, and it's how do you take care of update instances of applications in use for customers without losing their data?
Jeff or Michael, do you want to hit that one? I mean, basically, the technical answer is that you quiesce the running operations on the current instance before you kill it, and that way you ensure that any transactions that were in progress when you started the switch over are complete. Now, the nature of the Service Engage application is that there are very few transactions that are initiated from the site, so it's not such a big problem for us. Basically, the only one we have is the requesting of the free trial. Now, full disclosure, in the case of free trial, it's theoretically possible that a free trial could get interrupted during the update. We know about it, but we have a design fix in mind to address it. It's just that our logging has shown that just because of the frequency of updates and the frequency of trials, it's not an actual problem, it's more of a theoretical problem, but we still intend to address that. But the basic pattern is to quiesce transactions gracefully before killing the old application.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the nail on the head. So we're going to switch over, I guess, to more the nuts and the bolts of things. My name is Jeff Sawyer. I'm a developer on IBM Service Engage.
And I'm Barlock.
He's also a developer. So we want this to be really, really informal. Please stop us at any time and ask questions. I guess a good jumping off point for this is how do we become successful so quickly? Bill mentioned we got this out in 5 months, and really the most important part was acquiring good talent. Really the most important thing for us was getting the right fit culture-wise and process-wise. When you have a team that respects each other and can work well in a really fast manner, it just so many good things fall out of that. So what we kind of recruited for was trying to find people that believed in our process of trying to change things and do things differently, and really agile development and pushing the boundaries. Once we kind of found someone we thought that would be good for that, we'd invite them to lunch, and we'd basically do kind of like a small little informal interview in front of them and see if they were a good fit or not. Most of our code is actually in JavaScript, but we didn't really care about that if someone didn't have a lot of JavaScript experience. A couple developers actually came to the team, and they had really never touched JavaScript before, but now they're almost JavaScript gods. That kind of really happened is what's behind that is if someone's a really good developer, they'll probably know a couple different languages, Java, Python, whatever, it doesn't matter. If you can pick up one or two languages, you can pick up a lot more.
Yeah, actually, Jeff, can I just add something to that? Every now and again, since I'm the kind of the senior technical person on the team, people will say like, hey, I've got somebody who might be a good fit. What skills do they need? And I say they need to be real smart and they need to be really passionate. And they said, yeah, do they need to know JavaScript, Java? And I say it doesn't matter, because if they're really smart and really passionate, the other stuff will just fall out easily.
Yeah, one person in particular, they were really good at PHP, and obviously PHP is very, very different from JavaScript, and they picked up JavaScript super quickly, and it was no problem at all. Do you have anything to add?
No, that's you hit that topic on the head. Some other thing that we really like doing is we don't like having experts in one specific area. It's very important that all of our developers are full stack. The way that we organize our tasks is we always organize them in priority, and then the next person available takes that highest priority task, whether or not they're good at it or not. And what that allows us to do is that anytime that there's a problem in the site, we can just anyone, no matter where they are, can help with everything. And that really has allowed us to develop quickly.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, like, digging into that a little bit more, a more concrete example is some people on the team were security experts or, like, back-end, but we want you to be well-versed in front-end development as well. People that were well-versed in front-end development, we want you to know the intricacies of a back-end system we talk to. So, I mean, it's kind of a really good thing because it builds up your employees and makes them more powerful and feel more empowered to know what they're doing. But in the worst event, we call it the hit by a bus mentality. If I get hit by a bus, someone else can take over what I'm doing. Or if I'm out on vacation or something, that's maybe a better example, less gloomy. Someone else can pick up my work and do it, and it's no problem. As Bill mentioned earlier, the other added benefit of that is someone else will know the code, and if there is an issue in production, someone else can jump in, quickly debug it instead of sitting there and scratching your head for an hour like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, one other nice benefit, and Liz, as she's been tweeting, she kind of used the industry term, which is good, which is the full stack developer, the developer who's able to work on any part of the stack of the application. The other benefit from a planning perspective is execution of a plan becomes much easier because you don't have to wait for a scarce skill to become available. Like, say, Barlock was the only guy that knew the database, and we had two features that needed database attention, then we'd have to wait for Barlock to free up. If you've got a team of full stack developers, any developer can take the next task from the Kanban board. And it takes an investment because, of course, nobody on day one knows the full stack of an interesting application. But if you invest your time in getting each of the developers skilled up on the full stack, it makes planning and execution a lot simpler.
So you mentioned the term there that I think we should jump into, the Kanban board there. So we're kind of out in the Wild West with kind of the way we manage our work. So we use this tool that IBM has. It's called RTC. It doesn't really matter what it's called. But we basically have all of our business stakeholders write stories like desired outcomes they would like to see implemented in the site. And they get put into this tool, and then our product management ranks these things from lowest to highest priority. And when people on the team free up, we take whatever is at the top of the list and just start working on it. When we take that thing from the top of the list, as a team, everyone gets together and breaks down that story into smaller chunks. So it could have 2 chunks, it could have 7 chunks, it doesn't really matter. What we do is write them on these giant Post-it note stickies. It's actually really awesome. Bill gets excited when he hears the sound of one sticky moving. It's kind of funny. So we put them on stickies, and a Kanban board is basically, go Google it later, but it's basically a couple different states, and you move one thing from one section to another, and you can only have one thing in one section at a time. For example, one section of the board has a bunch of unstarted tasks, and at the other side of the board, there's a bunch of tasks that are completed. To get from one side to another, you have to start working on the task. That's the first phase. Each developer can only have one task in that state. While that sounds weird, I was actually against it at the beginning, but it's actually awesome. It helps you focus so much on what you're doing. You don't get sidetracked. It's great. And we kind of enforce it at our daily scrum. If someone's working on something that sounds not right, we ask them, like, where is it on the board? And if they're not working on it, we kind of get on them about it. But after you finish working on it, you move it to something called in review. It's the next step on the board, and you have to get someone else to review your code before another task can move into that area in the in review state, and eventually move it to in production / complete.
Yeah, the basic goal there is to maximize throughput of work, because what oftentimes happens is that if you kind of start a bunch of things in parallel, it feels good because you can report that I'm working on these 20 things, but they end up completing slower in the grand scheme of things because of the cost of task switching, like sort of remembering what you were working on and the other thing. It's better to, if you can do it, it's better to focus at one thing at a time, knock it out with high quality, and then go on to the next thing. Hey, there's a question in the chat from Christy, and it's nice that we have Barlock on the phone. The question is, how does the translation process work into this overall dev and deployment process? So maybe you can talk about, maybe just spend a minute, Barlock, on just sort of the basic nuts and bolts of translation, just so everybody knows. Probably a lot of people already do, but then talk about how we're thinking about addressing it with the continuous deployment process, because at the moment, the Service Engage site actually isn't translated, but it's one of our major upcoming items after the V2 work.
Yeah, before Barlock starts, I just wanted to mention something. As Bill kind of mentioned, our site's not translated, and we did that on purpose. We wanted to get something out the door really quickly, so the business decided it was okay to punt on translation and focus on higher priority things. So I guess the takeaway from that is you got to really figure out what's important to your business to succeed, and for our business, translation wasn't at the top of the list, but now it's kind of at the top of the list.
Right. So it's kind of interesting how we've actually decided to roll with translation when we're deploying, 20 times a day. What we're doing is, since the translation process actually can take quite a bit of time because you have to go get the files translated, make sure that it's right, and then, promote it. What we're doing is we're actually getting the translated files and stopping ship about once a month and calling that its own separate deployment. So what we'll have in the end is we'll have two separate apps running, one that's translated and one that's English. And the English site will actually be the newest and latest and greatest. And then probably about once a month, the translated site will get bumped up and be, at that point, the latest and greatest. And then so they'll be moving essentially in two streams of the translated site getting bumped up every now and again.
So, Christy, if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to just ask them in the chat, but that seemed like a pretty good answer. Okay. You guys, I think you've got a couple other things to talk about.
Yeah, so we also try to push the boundaries in our organization. Part of our team was to kind of reinvigorate the division and get people excited about coding again. I think Bill mentioned this earlier. We kind of followed some of the things that Etsy did, and there's another company called Pivotal, and they kind of pushed the boundaries culture and process-wise. And it's been kind of nice. Like we took some stances that maybe the business wasn't happy with in the beginning, and we slowly started moving back towards the middle with like a happy medium. And we were really happy, and we changed the way we started working. All these other teams we were interacting with, they started changing the way they were working a little bit. You could see some of the things moving over. Some teams would start doing scrums. Some other teams would try to start doing story plan the way we were. And really the best way to inspire change like this, and there's multiple books about this, is inspire change by doing, and other people will follow. It's really worked out well. Barlock or Bill, you want to add anything there?
No, I think the best way to drive change in a large organization, basically have existence proofs that you can point to, as opposed to saying like, hey everybody, let's do DevOps. Because if you've got success stories, people will want to copy success. And so I think that's the right way to do it. Just by coincidence, I'm in Austin this week working with the IBM design team, and they use exactly the same approach to drive design across IBM. They focus on a couple of projects, get the wins, and then there's a natural pull to adopt the practices rather than having to kind of force the practices upon people.
And Bill kind of mentioned this earlier. We use a lot of open source stuff for our project. I mean, what our project was focused on, there is no reason for us to reinvent the wheel on writing our own wrapper around a framework in Node.js. That's the programming language we use. There's no need to do that. The business doesn't care about that, or writing some logging framework. That's boring for them. The most important thing for us is quickest time to market, use anything we have to get there. And we kind of buffed a couple feathers getting there initially. For example, the database that Bill mentioned earlier that we use called Cloudant. We were looking at using a database inside of IBM, and it wasn't anywhere close to cloud scale or ready yet. So we looked outside and found this wonderful company called Cloudant that we now own. And they provided a wonderful service that was rock solid and up all the time. And we did this with multiple other things, used outside vendors for a lot of things, and just used open source where appropriate. And we've used IBM technologies here and there, but I guess the point to take away is don't be afraid to use something different that other people don't support just because it's not the right business or process or political thing to do. Use the thing that's what accomplishes your goals with your team.
That said very well.
Bill, you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I guess not every company has the resources to then subsequently buy that awesome technology.
I mean, even if they didn't buy it, though, we are more than happy paying them to run a service for that. We use another company for I'll mention this, it's fine, ClearDB for a MySQL database. We don't want to run a MySQL database. There's no reason to do that, so we're paying them a little chunk of money to do that for us. It's great.
Yeah, in all seriousness, though, one of the reasons we chose Cloudant, even prior to IBM buying them, was that they were already sort of pre-integrated into the software ecosystem, and our Bluemix infrastructure runs on top of software. And if we're going to use a non-IBM service, we always prefer kind of the software partner services, both for kind of logistical reasons, but also it just tends to be technically easier if the infrastructure is already pre-integrated into our public cloud.
Yeah, definitely. And we've used other things here and there. I guess also another important thing about open source was, yes, we use a lot of open source, and we've had some issues with it. Won't name the project specifically, but when we found issues, for the most part, we actually tried fixing them. A big notion to open source is actually contributing back. I mean, if you're just using open source and not contributing back, that kind of breaks the whole model completely. So when we found issues, which we did a lot with some projects, we contributed back fixes, and some of them were very naive and early on, and through other people's help and not just ours, they've stabilized a lot. And giving back to projects like that is really important. It gets some good cred for yourself, also your company, but it really keeps the whole open source ecosystem going.
Yeah, the one thing I'd add to that is sometimes when I think one kind of cop-out that leads to the not-invented here syndrome is when people look at an open source library like, let's say, the Express web framework that runs on top of Node, and they say, oh, it's got these two problems, and therefore I need to create my own web framework. Whereas the approach that we use, which Jeff mentioned, would be to say, you know what, Express is pretty awesome, and we're going to contribute fixes to those two problems so that we can use it and it can meet all of our needs.
Yeah, definitely. Barlock, you have anything you want to talk about?
Well, there's actually another question on the chat. Martin asked, for some organizations, going to DevOps is a big deal. So can we assume that DevOps is used throughout IBM or just pockets? And I think, Bill, you're probably best to answer that.
That's a fun question there. Yeah. This will be an interesting answer, Martin.
Yeah, no, actually, it's a good question, Martin. Basically, there's definitely an effort to adopt DevOps broadly across IBM, across software group when we create our software products, STG, who create hardware products and also corresponding software, and also our services groups that both create software for clients and systems for clients, but then also create systems for IBM internally. And the basic answer is there's pockets of goodness, but it's not something we are across the board excellent at. It's definitely an area we need improvement. The one thing that I think has made it harder for us is because we have traditionally been a company that delivers on-premise products, and continuous deployment, as you can imagine, is just naturally harder when you're talking about, thousands of clients installing it in unique configurations. Where we're having more success with the continuous deployment and DevOps stuff is with the newer SaaS offerings. So Jeff was actually with the Cloudant team a week or two ago, and they are awesome at the DevOps stuff. We are pretty good working on a SaaS property. So I think where we have SaaS, we've got pockets of excellence, and then a lot of people who are getting better fast. With the on-premise products, it's just more of a challenge. But what you see some teams doing, like the Rational Jazz team who creates products like Team Concert, is more of it's not continuous deployment in the sense of 10 times a day updates, but more of a regular rhythm of deliveries focused on ease of deployment so that you don't need to take outages during deployment. So like Adrian Cho, one of the guys on the Webcast, works on the Service Engage team, but he helped Rational pioneer this. They used to deliver a product like Rational Team Concert once a year, big bang upgrade, turn off your source control for 12 hours. But now they deliver it once a quarter, and companies are able to consume the on-premise products on a quarterly basis, and I think that's a pretty good example. But where we really see the DevOps success is, once again, is in the newer SaaS products.
But yeah, there's also an interesting point there. So we went pretty extreme with DevOps, but some of the teams we work with, a lot of them are on-prem products that are now switching to SaaS products. But they've started off kind of naive with DevOps stuff, but it kind of all leads back to the lead by example type of thing. A lot of other teams are starting to pick up this no downtime deployments, rolling upgrades, no outages, that type of stuff, and quicker deployments, and they're restructuring code, and it really just comes back to the leading by example with that. Other people see it works, and then they'll pick it up. Bill, you have anything else you want us to touch on?
No, I think we hit quite a few topics. I guess the last thing to say is we're talking about the sort of the outcome, which was successful, but it was actually extremely hard, and it's sometimes extremely painful because it's the way we developed and delivered Service Engage is not a traditional approach. It's much more akin to the way web startups deliver software, and changing the way you deliver software in a big company like IBM is not easy because people have prejudices. They, don't want to oftentimes resist change. Sometimes there's actual compliance processes that are incompatible with something like continuous deployment. So I don't want to make it seem like, hey, success, victory, it's easy. It's really, really hard, but it's worth it. So if folks in the Tivoli user community are struggling with these problems or just starting down this road and would like to talk to us more, feel free to reach out to Franny or Liz, and we'd love to talk to you about what we've learned, what problems we haven't solved, and also understand, what you've learned and what problems that you've solved and what problems you see remaining. So it'd be great to learn from each other.
Art, yeah, another question. This is actually a fun one. I'm going to answer it two ways. So they're kind of the same answer. Martin's question was, do you have any examples of having to roll back? Short answer, no. Our team, we never roll back. We always roll forward. Rolling forward can mean just going through the normal process, code review, deployment, and getting something out there the correct way. But also if it's a breaking change where the site's down, for example, those cases are very low. We'll short-circuit our process, do some dirty little fix, get it out there and get the site fixed, and then over time do the correct fix and get it through the correct process. Cloudant kind of does the same thing. The company we bought, always been talking about the database, they do the exact same thing. They never, ever, ever roll backwards. They always go forward. And I think that's an important lesson to learn. You should have trust in your code that your code's going to work, but rolling back is a really hard thing, actually, believe it or not. In the cloud, it's even harder. yeah, never roll back if you can avoid that. It sucks, really. I came from an organization inside of IBM called Lotus Live, and they had some rollback strategies, and it had to be done once. It was the most painful thing ever.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it'd be real. Do we have time? Yeah, maybe real briefly talk about the way we rolled out something like the V2, a free trial, because that's an example where if you do it wrong, you could be in a situation where you have to do a really painful rollback. But the way, if you do it with things like dark launches and sort of carefully thinking about the evolution of the database, it's, you can tolerate small problems.
Yeah, I mean, so when we do the dark launches, that's actually a really great way for us to smoke test things. It gives us the ability to look at the thing. We have our testers going. We give it out to internal people, and they can actually look at all of the things and make sure that we didn't miss anything. And then if ever we have breaking changes, and absolutely we have in the past, we can always just go back and fix them. But something else that we do that's very important while we're when we have those changes is we always go back and have a retrospective afterwards. We go back and we do a thing called the 5 whys, where you ask, all right, so why did this thing happen? Then after that, why did that happen? And then keep going 5 times until you actually get down to the root cause of the problem. And then once you come out of that, you have a set of actions that you have to take to basically make sure that that never happens again. And that's something else that's really helped us, so that way whenever we have those breaking changes, we don't have them again.
So someone in the chat just had a question from Nick. The question is, are new features written as user stories? Do you ever combine stories into an epic for a new build/release? Interesting question. So the V2 stuff is a perfect example of this. We did not actually have an epic for it. However, the way we kind of organized it, there was a bunch of stories, probably 6 or 7, the number doesn't really matter, 6 or 7 different stories that made up, I guess, what would be considered an epic. They were all tagged with a little keyword that kind of correlated them together. You can do epics. It's completely fine. We just chose not to. It's just another level of management and overhead we didn't want to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. I mean, the V2 work is a little weird in the sense that it was kind of it had to be done in parallel like an epic. But we basically only use stories and defects as our kind of 2 types of work items. And the basic reason is just simplicity of managing the work, but also it kind of allows for kind of a greater flow. Like when you declare an epic, sometimes it kind of forces you into a particular kind of thought process about what you're building, whereas if you've got a set of stories that go together, they can be more fluid, and then through the process of continuous delivery, they kind of naturally evolve. So if you were to look at our backlog, which isn't public, unfortunately, but maybe we can make it public in the future, what you'd see is near the top of the backlog, you've got stories that are kind of smallish and fairly precise, and then as you go down the backlog, you've got stories that are kind of bigger and more, a little bit less precise. And basically, as stories move near the top, we tend to kind of break them down into incremental units of value that help our customers and deliver each of those incremental units of value faster. So usually we try to define stories in such a way that we can deliver 1 or 2 a week, and they actually should be, the website should be more useful to the user after we've delivered them. They shouldn't just be underlying infrastructure. That's one of the basic things we use to kind of scope the stories. If it doesn't make the site just a little bit better for the user, we're not ready to implement that story.
Yeah, that's a perfect explanation right there, Bill. Okay. Any other questions from the audience we can answer? Obviously, as Liz and Bill said, please contact Franny or Liz, and we can direct you to more information if you want it.
Yeah, the one last thing I want to say, you had a good explanation of the postmortems. That's again modeled on the Etsy approach. A friend of mine, John Allspaw, he's a guy at Etsy, their senior VP of Ops, and he wrote this sort of incredible article called Blameless Postmortems, and I'm going to post it on Twitter. But for me, that's how it's one of the basic mechanisms of creating a learning organization. And so whenever we screw up, which we do from time to time, like Jeff said, we write up the postmortem, but the thing Jeff didn't mention is that we publish it to all of IBM. So we basically put it on a community. We tell the entire internal community that cares about Service Engage. We share it with the Bluemix team because they're kind of a partner SaaS team. And we share it with what's called the DevOps Center of Competency. So going back to Martin's previous question, we have sort of this internal DevOps Center of Excellence, and we actually share our postmortems with them, and they have a community of, hundreds or thousands, because the basic principle of the blameless postmortems in the learning organization is that when you screw up, you're actually in the best position to teach others how not to repeat that same mistake. So you should actually take advantage of it and share it, which takes obviously a certain level of courage, because it's not fun to say you screwed up, but it's worth it.
I mean, if you back up from that, though, it's really good to do that. I guess the thing that took a little bit maybe to get in people's minds was screwing up is okay. So usually people are not happy with things not working, but obviously they happen for a reason, and if you screwed up, someone else will probably do the same mistake in the future, and documenting why that happened is a wonderful thing.
Right, and also just to tie one more dot, and maybe then we'll actually end, going back to Jeff's point about hiring really strong people and having the self-selecting team. When people that you've hired for being really good and really strong screw up, it's usually because there was a combination of non-obvious factors. And usually there's something interesting that could be sort of fixed at the system level. So for instance, a week or two ago, we broke free trials for the application performance management capability for about 12 hours. And there were about 3 interesting combinations of technical reasons that caused that, but it actually led to sort of a breakthrough in the thinking about the architecture of free trial, which is going to make it much more robust and much faster in the future. And that would not have happened if we'd not done the kind of the retrospective and the blameless postmortem to really deeply think about what went wrong in those 3 kind of non-obvious combination of factors. All right, and I'm posting a link to John's blameless postmortem article in the Twitter. If you do nothing else for learning this month, read that article, and your organization will be better off for it.
Okay, thanks, guys. We've got about 3 minutes left in the hour. I think that's about all the questions that we have. Just a reminder, we will be sending out links to today's presentation, including the presentation slides and the replay. I will put contact information out there for the team, so if you have follow-up questions, you can get in touch with these guys. Want to thank everyone for spending the hour with us. Special thank you to everyone, all the presenters today. Liz, Barlock, sorry, I actually called you Michael. I'll call you Barlock from now on. Bill, so thanks everyone. Have a wonderful day, and you may now disconnect.